When it comes to like a depression that deep and like a wound that deep that you try to take your own life like several times, and then you see this medicine or this drug that works, right? When we're seeing it in trials, it works. And I've now experienced it and it works. And it's one dose. It was one dose. Yeah. Like my biggest thing is I have like a mild headache and my jaw hurts. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Right. And I sweat a little bit. Yeah. That's it. Then you have pharmaceutical companies pushing these SSRIs that have black box labels of violence and suicide. And you have someone who's already suicidal, but that's okay. But we made this other thing. If you take this other thing, you go to jail. It doesn't make sense. And then with that bill that's getting passed, wasn't it rejected or it was like tossed back?
The committee, it's a misnomer. The committee basically gave a recommendation. Now, the committee experts that were on that committee, even the FDA director in the middle of the session. So you're referencing a committee recommendation on MDMA approved therapy that they're expecting to still vote on. They're still voting in August. So it wasn't the actual vote. Okay. But it was a committee recommendation. And now the appointees of the committee are not psychedelic informed, so they don't even understand the drug side. They also don't understand the FDA trials very well. So I just listened to a podcast with another neuroscientist and MD that's in the space, Apollo Neuroscience founder, and they talked about how the FDA director was even getting frustrated in the middle of the committee because it was like they were in a pissing contest to figure out who could throw the most holes in the study, even though Lycos had worked hand in hand, or MAPS had worked hand in hand with the FDA to design the study, and they were throwing out objections around like the therapy side. Well, FDA is not supposed to regulate therapy. So it's just really a bogus kind of most likely set up by Big Pharma to delay. It's only going to delay. It's not going to stop it. Okay. The approval. You think the approval is going through? I don't know if it's going to happen in August. It's probably 50-50 versus it looked like a near certainty. And so it's a headline grabber. So now everyone's like, all these, scary things, it's not safe. And it's like, but these big pharma drugs, like I had a girlfriend in after college who's walked home on her roommate who was on a SSRI and shot herself in the brain. Whoa. Done. Right. So that stuff happens all the time. Your odds of committing suicide are just as high on SSRIs, typically, on most of them. I'm not a scientist, but I've seen data around that. They can help in certain cases, but you don't want to be on them long term. And most of the time, like I have clients that have been on like Lexapro for 15 years. And why? Like that's not a solution. That's a Band-Aid.
So do you think when people see that headline, do you feel the general consciousness is like that's bullshit, or do you think that there's still a lot of hesitation and like
I think people that don't really understand it no, it's total, or the people that don't understand it will be like, oh, I guess it's not going to pass. I guess it's, but people that are really in the know, the neuroscientists, the therapists, the organizations I'm aware of, the leaders, all the biohackers also too, the people that have experienced it, they know it's BS, and it's ultimately going to get passed. Even the FDA director, they are funded by Big Pharma because all the trials goes to FDA, right? They have to pay the FDA millions of dollars for all these trials, but the evidence is overwhelming. It's the greatest breakthrough. Psilocybin and MDMA are the greatest breakthroughs that we have in mental health, and Veterans Administration is desperate. 22 veterans a day commit suicide. Well, I think it's 70% of veterans that were in the study. If I remember correctly, about 70%, they had been labeled treatment-resistant depression and treatment-resistant PTSD, meaning the other stuff wasn't working. And so MAPS, if I remember correctly, chose the most difficult participants to participate, and 70% of them got full remission. So went from no hope, you're stuck, you just have to manage and cope with your symptoms the rest of your life, this is all we got, to you're fully cured. Based a year later, still no symptoms of depression or PTSD. So, and I see that with my wife. I see that with most of my clients. Essentially, all my clients, we will get them to the desired outcome if they stick with the process. Sometimes it's one session, sometimes it's 2 or 3.
Did you see that headline? It was in Canada where it was a veteran that was having mental health issues, and he went in trying to get mushrooms like psilocybin, and it's legal up there. Yeah. And they wouldn't give him that, but they offered him MAID.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard your interview with the person that was
Kelsey.
Yeah. Kelsey. Insane.
So when I see that, I feel like that's not by accident in some nefarious way. It's like that's very anti-life, and you have both that are at your disposal. Then why aren't you helping this person with something that could save their life versus like offering like a death pod? That makes no sense to me at all, unless you don't want that population to get better, because the way that we treat our vets is disgusting. Yeah. And we have the capabilities. Like, we're one of the most powerful nations, and so is Canada. Yeah. In the world.
We have. And the cost of the drugs themselves for a single treatment is like $30 or $50.
Right. So why aren't we just, it seems like there's something else, like there's something missing. And it, to me, where my mind goes, because I'm often like, what is the worst thing anyone could want? Yeah. And it's like, these are really powerful people. They're powerful, they're patriotic, they're protective. So they are a threat to big government, and they're a threat to big power. And I think it's intentional. Like, we want to use you, and when we're done with you, we don't want you to turn on us if ever there's a situation. 100%. So now you're disposable. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because why else we let them be homeless? And I think the number is higher than 22. I want to say it's in the 40s a day, which is crazy. There was that graph of Afghanistan. It showed like all of the wars and then the suicide, and they were just leagues apart from each other. That's not by mistake.
No. Yeah. And it's crazy to think too, like, we denied veterans, like Vietnam veterans, that they had a major issue basically for years. And then finally, they, with enough lobbying and organizing, they created the designation of PTSD. That didn't happen until 1983. Wow. Right. And it was really because so many Vietnam veterans were showing so many just erratic, difficult symptoms. They weren't coming back into normal life, and we didn't understand it. Now we understand trauma and PTSD. So, I mean, we've had like 100 years worth of breakthroughs in the last 10 years, but we still got a lot to unpack and a lot to understand.
So do you think, like, what's the next phase? I guess it has to be like legalized for it to scale technically.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's, so that will hopefully, if it doesn't happen in August, will hopefully happen next year. But in the meantime, I mean, there's underground movements and experiences, and it's just growing. It's mushrooming because people are desperate for change. When as more and more people like yourselves, like you just had a beautiful breakthrough, your nervous system is recalibrating. Then what, like a lot of my clients, I don't, just for safety's sake, I do not dose or supply the medicine. So that protects me legally. But my clients, when they experience a breakthrough, because I can sit with them, there's no law that says you can't sit with them. Well, then they end up referring me 4 or 5 other friends. And because everyone knows someone that's suffering with depression or PTSD, or their marriage is in crisis, or they're just stuck, emotionally stuck. And one session, I can get them unlocked usually.
Yeah, it was wild.